As I'm sure you're aware, emotions don't just affect you, but they affect other people around you. Today, I want to talk about the legacy of emotions and how your response to your own emotional well being doesn't just affect you, but will affect your children and your children's children. Before I begin, my name is Mariah. I'm a certified Christian mental health coach, and I love helping people learn about emotions through a Christ centered foundation and a whole body approach. So, learning how to both have your faith and your body hand in hand when experiencing emotions. I was on Instagram earlier and I saw this beautiful slide that was talking about the next generation and raising them into a legacy. And we don't talk about legacy a lot. When you think about legacy, I don't know what comes to mind, but for me, I tend to think of the Greeks or the Romans or civilizations that were once a bygone era and now what they have left behind for us. I don't tend to think of it in a contemporary way because legacy tends to not make sense in our instant me iPhone era age where everything is just about us. It's about the likes that we get, it's about the followers that happen to follow us, it's about how many times you're able to be an influencer and promoting the idea of self. And there's not really a lot of room for legacy. When you think about when someone dies, especially in the post modern era, where all of our heroes now become these villains because their stories are coming up about how you thought they were one way and now they're another. There's this disenfranchisement, this disillusionment when you think you can trust someone and now you can't. And the generation that's growing up now, the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, are growing into an environment where you really just don't trust that people are who they say they are. And yet, that's what you crave. That's what you want. You want people who are who they say they are. You want that trust and that stability. But the generations before have really shown that we have this ability to put a mask on and we have this ability to pretend to be one way. And I think emotions play a big role into that, especially if you grew up in an environment where you really weren't allowed to express how you felt. People didn't know how to deal with tough emotions like anger or fear or sadness. And if you grew up in a more conservative Christian home, those feelings tended to be surrounded by spiritual words. So you then felt like you were less of a Christian, less of a good person because you had these additional human experiences that no one really wanted to deal with. When we think about legacy, we think about what are we going to be leaving behind for our children? Not a lot of people think about the emotional legacy that we leave behind, the emotional skill sets, the emotional changes. There's a shift in parenting today where the generation before really didn't talk about that, and the generation now only talks about that, only lets the child dictate, let them lead with their emotions. And I'm here to propose in general that the legacy that we leave behind is not one that's dictated by emotions, whether the suppression of them or the expression of them, but rather the submission of them to the Holy Spirit, listening to God, letting Him guide us. I think one of the greatest things that for me when I experienced just in my early 20s and really developing my faith and growing that aspect of my life, I was surrounded by some people who really thought towards the future. Were thinking, what is my life going to look like at 50, 60, 70? And we don't take a lot of time, especially when you're in a younger age, if you're a teenager or if you're like going off into college, career age, like everything's fresh and new. You don't think, what is my life going to look like 20, 30 years down the road? You just think, how the heck am I going to survive getting through this class? Or how am I going to get this job? Or how am I going to pay my bills for getting an apartment, especially nowadays? You don't think about that. But I want to challenge you, especially if you're in a younger generation, to think about what choices and habits and thoughts and emotions you allow to dictate your life, to guide you to be who you are right now, because who you are right now is only going to be 10 times more. If you're someone who just is nose to the grind and puts your emotions on the back burner and lets all of that go, that's not for me, that's not important, you're going to be like that, but 10 times worse. If you're someone who lets emotions take you by the wind and you go this way or go that way, if you're sad or if you're happy or if you're angry and you just express all of it with no amount of self-control, you're going to be like that, but 10 times worse. And so it's hard to know what you want to be if you don't have a vision for it. And my encouragement is, if you are younger, I want you to see the people in your life. Who are they? Who are you aspiring to be like? What is their life like emotionally? Are they honest? Are they able to express deep emotional feelings such as sadness, fear, and anger? Are they able to hold both discomfort and hope in the same hand? Because you can have someone who maybe is super positive and never tends to see the dark side of things, never tends to sit in the uncomfortableness for too long. And as we are learning and growing and discovering, when you do not take the time to be human, when you do not reflect and sit in the lament, the difficulty of life, it actually can affect your body, because you're going through this experience and yet your body's like, I need you to slow down and we need to process this. And you're like, nope, we're not going to sit here. We're not going to stay here. And we might cover it up with some spiritual language of, my hope is in God, and he makes all things new, and God works all things for my good. And those things are true and those things are powerful. But there's still something to be said about honestly acknowledging what you are going through. Because when Jesus, as he was going into the Garden of Gethsemane, the night that he was betrayed, when all of this heaviness of him having to go to the cross, enduring pain that was not even supposed to be his, when he was going through that, his body was physically responding. And when he was praying to God. He said, God, if there's any other way, give me a different way. And I love that Jesus modeled for us being honestly, emotionally transparent before God, saying, God, if there's anything else, if there's any other way, if there's any other choice, please let me have that. And I love that he wasn't just covering it up and saying, God, I know your way is the only way, and you're just the most amazing God in the world, and like, what I'm going through is nothing. What he was going through wasn't nothing. It was so heavy and so hard. His body was under so much pressure and so much weight that he was physically sweating blood. The doctors that study the life of Jesus and go through that, they were making commentary. I remember hearing this, that to go through and have your body sweat blood is such a disruption of stress. Your body is under so much stress. And I love that God gave us our bodies the way that he did to help teach us when we are going through difficult things. Our bodies are a witness to our experiences, and the legacy that you leave behind will be also part of your physical body. What type of weight are you carrying right now in your early age that's going to affect you when you're 60 years old? Are you struggling with anger so much that you're just going to cripple yourself when you become older? Did you know that anger cripples you? Did you know that people who struggle and their hands don't work right and their body doesn't work right, and the aches and pains, that some of that, a good portion of that, has to do with underlying anger that's never been dealt with? Our emotions will take us over, and we will leave behind a legacy that we may not want to see. And my encouragement for you is that you learn to have an honest and transparent faith before God, that your emotions are not just clouded in spiritual language, they're not dismissed, and they're not without self control, but rather they are submitted to God in a way that acknowledges the honest experience and also trusts that who God is, who he says he is. So hopefully you will be able to develop a legacy, leave behind, that others can see through you what it means to have an emotionally healthy faith. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, leave a comment below. I'd love to be able to connect with you and hear what your thoughts are. Thanks for joining.